Hello and welcome inside another edition of the Scores Table. Brian Haenchen, Danny Riego here with you. We had a little difficulty getting online because apparently there's an unexpectedly high amount of traffic. So buckle in, get ready for some potential shenanigans, folks. This will be really fun. We have a lot of things to talk about today. Obviously, we're going to be joined by Mollie Ernstes of Jennings County coming off the Panthers 64-59 upset win over Warsaw. We also got to talk Homestead Plainfield. We have Valpo, Eastern Hancock, Danny and I took in, East Central, Hammond Central, and then obviously some other news that we need to get to. Danny, let's start with Jennings County, Warsaw, because I think that was probably the game of the day, and if not for Homestead Norwell, it probably would have been the game of the week. Certainly unexpected, to say the least. A mammoth performance from Mollie Ernstes, who finishes with 31, Etta Young with 10. A lot of big plays from Aniston Kent. She had a couple big threes there in the fourth quarter. I'll start the conversation with this. Jennings County was coming off a loss to Cathedral the night before, and the conversation afterwards from Christy Sigler and her staff was about toughness and, kind of just challenging them to play tougher against a really difficult team in Warsaw on Saturday. And I think that it's fair to say the girls more than stepped up in that situation.
Yeah, you opened with the loss to Cathedral the night before. On a night like when I think like Caroline Wiggins hit like 4 or 5 threes, something like that. Talking about physicality, I think Wiggins also had a double-double, multiple rebounds. It's natural that you're going to talk about toughness when you lose rebounding battles, things like that. But I thought the toughness showed, particularly on the rebounding side. But look, we'll get into it at a deeper level. But what a great bounce back win from just Jennings County's perspective. Just what a great bounce back win. And they needed to play a really good game in different aspects. And I thought they did.
They got so many. That was my curiosity going into this, watching Jennings County, because I'll be honest, I was expecting Warsaw to win that handily, as I think you were. I think a lot of people were. But the thing that I was curious to see from Jennings County, regardless of the result, was to see what kind of support Mollie got around her. And she got it in spades. Etta Young had the 10 points. She was great. Aniston Kent, as I mentioned at the top there, she hit the three-pointer in the fourth from the wing, well behind the line from where my vantage point was, to make it a 1-point game. I think Warsaw goes down, hits a shot. Mollie comes back with another three, and then Kent again bombs one on 2 shots that she thought were low and were bad shots out of her hand, wound up going in there. And that's what tilted that game. That's what defined it there for Jennings County. That's the sort of win that can propel a team and launch a team. I'll zero in on Mollie as I kind of just bounce around, but I thought that Warsaw did an okay job guarding her. They forced her into some tough shots, and that kid just found ways to hit shots. It seemed like every time she had multiple times in the first quarter where she just hit this little turnaround hook shot thing off balance. I think she had 3 or 4 of those in a row to kind of get them going. And I was talking to a friend of the show, Jason Simpson, during the second quarter. And I was just, in between conversations, just kind of peek up. And every time that I looked up, expecting to see Warsaw pulling away, instead it was Mollie hitting a big shot on the other end to just keep Jennings County within striking distance, before that aforementioned run there in the fourth quarter when they pulled ahead.
Yeah, I would like to circle back to Etta Young and Aniston Kent eventually. But if we're going to talk about Mollie, that, she doesn't get the opportunity to maybe play in front of a widespread audience. I think people know that she's good. People obviously saw her sign the national letter of intent to Kansas. Look, up in these parts, she is still on some level she's a little bit of an urban legend. So what an opportunity for her to be able to go out and perform. But there's a difference between performing in a win and performing in a loss. Being able to lead your team against one of the 5 best teams in the state, probably undeniably one of the 5 best teams in the state, to elevate the performance of your teammates, I think is a big step for her. And to take it back, I'll tell you a story. It's a recycled story. Hank, you've heard me say this before, but as we kind of turn over our audience year to year, there will be many that are hearing this for the first time. But the first time that I saw Mollie Ernstes was her freshman year. She was playing at Warren Central, and I was standing at the top with a bunch of Jennings County people actually watching Julianne Woodard. And here's this freshman who I think she hit 7 threes in that game. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to say big deal. She made shots, but like that, she kind of announced herself as a shooter at that point. I had never seen her play basketball before. I started asking questions about her, started to learn a little bit more about her. But if you look at that point at which that story happened to last night against Warsaw, like look at what she's added to her bag. Like everyone will talk about the step back three that she had, which was ridiculous. There's not many people, like honestly, nationally, that could make that shot. Like that was a ridiculous shot. She needs no time to get her 3-pointer off. You're almost surprised every time that she misses.
Mhm.
Last night she got to 31 because her mid-range game was like really good last night. And it wasn't like downhill 1-2 step attacks where she would get to a spot and raise. There was some of that, but they were all, Jennings County was also throwing the ball in on the block. She had a couple of like spin moves, fadeaways. Like she was, when I don't know if the kids still say it, but like in her bag last night, like just using everything that she works on and trains on, and her ability to score at 3 different levels that's going to make anybody it's going to give anybody problems. Like really good defenders, like they had Division I kids guarding her last night, and she put up 31 in a showcase game, which was really, really remarkable to watch.
And that's something too that we'll have to talk to Mollie about, but you kind of mentioned her 3-ball not working for her early. So she kind of focused on working inside and building out and finding her effectiveness there. And it's, to your point, obviously, I don't get to see Mollie as much as you. I try and see her when they're up here, and I'll see them at these showcase events. But just her evolution in the game and just the times that have seen her, even just from last year at Sneakers for Santa to this year, is remarkable. And at the AAU event that I saw over the summer, just her the steps that she's taken and continues to grow is incredible. And Lenny said it, and I agree with him. She's going to have a phenomenal run there at KU. I'll let you have the floor. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like last year, she got over 30 against Pendleton Heights, I think, in the Sneakers for Santa game. I mean, I'd have to go back and really think about it, but my recollection also tells me that she got her first Division I offer on the strength of what she did maybe against South Bend, Washington, her second year of Sneakers. Like they're always up here at Sneakers. Like, Christy Sigler obviously is a very connected coach in regards to the IBCA and with the people that put that on. And so they've been kind of a mainstay here. And if you look at her evolution of playing in this event specifically, like she's had some really good games. And like I said, one that led to, I think, her first Division I offer, maybe in the MAC, Eastern Michigan, maybe, I think, if my recollection serves me correct. But then to be on the same floor as like, kids like Zartman and Bricker and, these kids who, fair or unfair to Mollie, maybe have considered to be on that all-star team, maybe already, regardless of what they do. But I think Mollie showed in this event that she maybe belongs on that list as well, because like when the lights are bright, like she just does it. And so you had mentioned kind of seeing her at this event. You're seeing some really good Mollie Ernstes basketball, and just kind of a closing point on Mollie. And I know we'll talk to her and have an opportunity to say more about her, but like when people say things like best shooter on the team, best shooter in the state, best shooter in the country, it sounds like hyperbole, and it almost like, oh, come on, like the best shooter in the. I don't think that is as hyperbolic as people think that it is. And again, maybe I have the luxury of seeing it on a national scale. Maybe I have the luxury of seeing it at a higher volume. But what this kid does, particularly from the 3-point line and scoring the basketball, is as good as we have seen in the southern hemisphere of this state in a very long time.
Before we bounce over and talk about Etta and Aniston, just a punctuating thought for me on Ernstes. It's funny you bring up the All-Star thing, because as I was watching Mollie cook yesterday, the thought crossed my mind. I kind of assumed that she was a lock for All-Stars. I guess kind of the thought that went across my mind is how much fun is it going to be watching this kid and Jocelyn Bricker and Brooke Zartman play on the same team in an All-Star event. Like that's going to be a blast. So for me, I think that it's a foregone conclusion with just the way that she shoots the ball and what she brings to the floor, and her versatility as a shooter too, I think makes her really valuable in that sort of all-star setting. Danny, I'll let you wrap up the Jennings County side of things with just your thoughts on what we saw from Aniston Kent and Etta Young.
Yeah, so Aniston Kent, if that name sounds familiar to people, this was the kid who, and Hank actually ran the highlight on the scores table when we got down toward the postseason last year. She's the kid that hit the three at the buzzer to win the game, and it was her first 3-point attempt of the season last year. And in this game against Warsaw, she hit 3 threes. So, like, look at the evolution of these kids, like Etta Young, and in this case, Aniston Kent. Like 3 rainbow threes, and they were big time. Etta Young was the beneficiary of paint congestion that Mollie created. And not to say that she didn't have her own creation, but Mollie's release valves have to be multiple. Like she can't just have one. And Etta Young does seem like has the trust and the respect and the comfort level in playing alongside an extraordinary scorer like Mollie Ernstes to be able to get really good opportunities at the rim. There were a couple in big time scenarios, but there's one ATO situation that I wanted to point out in regards to Aniston Kent. So Christy Sigler calls a timeout. I think maybe they have a 4-point lead. They're maybe their biggest lead of the game, and there's about 2.5 minutes left. Sigler calls timeout, and out of that timeout, they were setting flare screens for Mollie out of a between the circles, like middle third set, where Mollie would throw it to the right wing and then get a flare screen. They slipped that flare screen in that ATO, and Christy Sigler ran that for Aniston Kent. She didn't run it for Etta Young. She didn't run it for Mollie Ernstes. She ran it as Mollie Ernstes' decoy for Aniston Kent, a kid again who hit her first 3-pointer in sectionals last year and had 3-point. Now she missed the layup, and I kind of teased Aniston after the game about that. But what a great honor for her to have her number called in the Warsaw game in an ATO situation. So that kind of sequence also kind of shows where Christy Sigler can take this basketball team. You're up 4 ATO. That's Mollie Ernstes at the top of the key, clear out 4 low all day. She didn't do that. She set a flare screen as a decoy, slipped Aniston Kent. They threw a strike, got a right-hand layup on the right-hand side for a right-hand basketball player, and you can't get a better look than that.
That was really impressive. Jennings County now 4-1 on the season. A lot of kids up from JV for them. I'm interested to see how they progress as the season goes along. But like I said, that's a building block type of win for them. Danny, let's save the Warsaw side of things maybe for the discussion towards the end of the show, where we talk about how you rank the top teams in the state. I think that's an interesting discussion to have there. Let's talk about Eastern Hancock Valparaiso, as we have about 13 minutes here before Mollie's set to join us. Valparaiso 80-38 over Eastern Hancock. A game that both you and I thought was going to be close and competitive coming in. Valparaiso took steps and ensured that it was neither close nor competitive pretty early on, and that was an impressive showing by them. And for Eastern Hancock, I mean, that's the type of game that forces you to get better. You learn about your team. It exposes all the flaws, and it shows you where you need to get better at. So I think it's a mutually beneficial win despite the final score.
Yeah, I think Eastern Hancock probably just fought up in weight class last night, and I thought that it showed. The physicality, so the questions going into it was obviously Cook and Barnes. The next was the secondary scoring of Bella Sotelo. There were storylines that honestly proved that I just kind of missed it going into it. I thought the game boiled down to physicality, strength, size, speed. Like, you could tell that Eastern Hancock was fighting out of weight class. And Valparaiso, conversely, did a great job of just leaning on them, just putting their hands on them, and just, essentially, I don't make it sound like it was anything other than just bigger kids, but they were pushing them around a little bit. And I think that's a very difficult thing because, Kenzie Cook probably knew it coming into it. She saw it at Triton Central. She sees it in every basketball game that she does. If it's not a box and one, it's a full face guard. If it's not a full face guard, it's a full face guard with a help defender right in the middle of the paint. But there's a difference between putting any defender in the paint and putting a kid like Cadence Clark in the middle of the paint. Like they didn't have anywhere that they could go. And when you have that in dead ball change set defenses, you have to be able to create opportunities, maybe in transition off the defensive side. And I thought Valparaiso just played a complete basketball game. They handled the ball so well. Lily Barnes was just so under control. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I've always kind of said about her, she just makes the right play. If she had 15 assists in that game and 5 points, she'd have taken it. But she just has such a comfort level of that. Yeah, Eastern Hancock can't score, so I've just got to take care of the basketball. And to me, those were kind of the two storylines: was Valparaiso's ability to handle the basketball and Valparaiso's strength and size, and particularly dead ball change on the defensive side.
Speaking of Lily Barnes and your point about her, she could have, 5 points and a dozen assists or whatever and not really care. I asked her just general thoughts, takeaways of the game to kind of get the interviews going. And Lily's response was basically like, the score is whatever. The numbers are whatever. The point is this, and this. This is what we did well. We had good energy, played well as a team. The numbers don't matter. And, then she talked about the job they did defensively against Kenzie Cook. So it is interesting. And to your point, I mean, that kid, same thing as Mollie Ernstes, where it's kind of difficult. When I get to see them, but Lily's growth and development from when I first saw her as a freshman against Lake Central up at Valpo to where she is yesterday is just, it's phenomenal, because she was a really talented freshman. And now you kind of see that complete evolution of her game where, like you said, the passing and her ability to hit shots from a variety of spots on the floor in a variety of different ways is just, it's a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, there's going to be some tougher competition, especially around here. We talked last show about the Noblesville invite around Christmas time, which we'll get to see her next down here. That'll be really fun. But 26 points for Lily, 18 for Delilah Kincaid. Elena Harding had 13 points, and Kenzie Cook led Eastern Hancock with 24. Yeah, the thing with Eastern Hancock is just, where do you get production beyond Kenzie Cook and Bella Sotelo? I think that's going to be kind of what defines the trajectory of their season, because as it stands now, Eastern Hancock, I had the stats here up just a second ago. Eastern Hancock has scored 280 points through 4 games. Kenzie Cook accounted for 117 of those points, and Bella Sotelo accounted for an additional 60. So that's 177 points right there between those two. So it's part of the process. A lot of teams are going to have to go through this. Kind of going to see the same thing over at Lapel, for instance, with Lanai Wills, who's going to step up alongside her. And at Eastern Hancock, that's a big thing. And same thing with Mary Rose Felling at Triton Central. It's the way it is for a lot of these 2A schools, where you have that standout. Now it's just a matter of developing that depth beyond them. Because while they are extremely talented players at 2A, the deeper you get into the tournament, the easier it's going to be for some of these teams to key in on your best player and shut them down and force you to find other ways to win games.
That's a great point. This was not like, oh, Valpo's playing us differently than every other basketball team. Like, you're right that it is really good training for the postseason. Let me ask you a question. You said you had the box score up. If you minimize it, go ahead and open it back up. What were the field goal attempts for Sotelo and Cook?
I just have leading scores. Let me look and see if Eastern Hancock, I don't think they have full stats up yet, but I would be interested to see that as well.
And the reason why I say that is, and I'll talk a little bit while Hank kind of searches for it. Many times when you play a talent like Kenzie Cook, the number that you're focused on isn't the total points. So I don't know that Valpo necessarily cares that Kenzie Cook got 24, but after the game, like, I was within earshot of Kenzie talking to her future college coaches, and she was talking about how she missed shots and how she wished that she shot the ball better. Like, that's the design of the way that teams like Valpo need to play against teams like Eastern Hancock. Is the thought always is we want her to get 20 attempts to get 20 points, or 30 attempts to get 30 points. So Hank, how'd they do?
Can't find the stats.
Can't find it. Okay. No big deal. I mean, I think the point has already landed, though, that if Kenzie Cook is going to say that she didn't make shots in ones that she needed to, that obviously tells you that, like, hey, getting shots is hard in this game. Like, I feel like now Kenzie Cook is feeling, I've got to make every shot that I take. I bet they weren't that bad, but I bet that she was up in the mid-20s in regards to volume too. And that that's a Valparaiso win right there. And so now let's parlay this into what this means for Valpo. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, they have the loss against Warsaw, but it's a very similar game plan that you would employ versus Warsaw than you would Eastern Hancock. Like would Warsaw beat Eastern Hancock in a vacuum of yeah, probably. I don't think there's anybody that would bet on Eastern Hancock in that game. But having to make kids like Bricker, for example, take a high volume of attempts in order to get to her point production. If Zartman's going to hit 5 threes, well, let's make her take 15 of them to hit the 5. You know, those are nice philosophies. So I think a really good step for Valpo in the right direction in regards to execution of game plan. Scoring 80 points, holding a really, I mean, look, it's Lily Barnes' future Division I college teammate who's been lighting up the scoreboard and to hold her team to 38 points. That was a complete dismantling, quite honestly. I mean that with all due respect to Eastern Hancock, but they were just out of weight class.
I think they would probably say the same thing. And that's kind of what Kenzie said was that, that happens. It's a really good team we ran into. And then to your point about it's going to be interesting too, because we're going to see Valpo in some of these similar matchups down the line. They're going to play Hamilton Southeastern, KK Holman, and Kayla Stidham. Yep. It's the same type of dynamic there. That's going to be at the North Central tournament on December 29th. And there's some other really good teams at that event. They're going to play Norwell at the Noblesville event and then either get Noblesville, Cece Quigley, Allie Hutchinson, or Fort Wayne Snyder, Janaea Cooper, and the transfer that they've added in. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And then not to mention, too, before all of them, they get McCutcheon on December 13th at home. That was a big ad for McCutcheon. Jeff Canoy talked about beefing up the schedule. They added Valparaiso. So how do they guard Lily Graves? So that's going to be fascinating to see how Valparaiso handles that. And then obviously they're one of those teams I think everybody expects to see in regionals, if not semi-state here in February.
Yeah. And I'm belaboring this point, but I will tell you too, when you take defenders and definitively put them on helpline to take away a singular player's effectiveness, like in this case, if Kenzie Cook has the ball on left wing, you have everybody literally sitting in the middle of the floor waiting for her to come to you. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if Kenzie Cook makes a play off the pass, that is not a very simple rotation. Like, because sometimes she's making that pass because she's downhill attacking and drawing a help defender. That means that help defender who's there and that's their job, they're not the person that's going to go to where Kenzie Cook passes the ball. That's somebody else. So they're logging just invaluable experience on man-to-man defensive rotation also. And you bring up another good point. We're going to get to see it against other really good basketball teams. And I just think that this, like, Valpo's scary. Like, scary to a team like Warsaw. Like, against a team that beat them, against a team that stands in Warsaw's way of advancing into the semi-state round. This is really, really good experience. We talk about the experience of Eastern Hancock. It's just as valuable, if not more so, for Valpo in this instance.
100%. And then Eastern Hancock, I think we touched on their schedule briefly last show, but I mean, they have Greensburg here at the start of December. That's going to be an excellent test for them. Maybe something a little more comparable for them versus a Valparaiso. Then you have Cathedral and the Pell later in December. So they stack this thing up pretty nicely. Then you have New Pal to close out or towards the end of January there. So plenty of tests there for Eastern Hancock as well. I'm curious again to see how things develop. And that was really, they've played Triton Central and then Valparaiso. So they're kind of getting their feet wet after rolling to some easy wins over Westdale, Rushville, and Class A Cowan as well in the conference. Danny, we're going to be joined here by Mollie Ernstes in just a couple minutes. As soon as Mollie throws on her camera, we can get her on a couple minutes early. But yeah, any other general thoughts, takeaways from what we saw there at Sneakers for Santa? We should probably mention Brownsburg and the performance of freshman Ava Emberton. Another big performance from her as they picked up a 20-point win, I believe it was, over Pendleton Heights. That one really surprised me. I caught up with Sabe afterwards and he was just like, hey, man, how'd the game go? And he's like, we won by 20. And I thought he was messing with me at first because I thought I was expecting that to be a really close game just because of what Pendleton Heights brings back and what I know of Brownsburg is expecting a good competitive game. But tip of the cap to Brownsburg. They rose to the challenge and really dominated that thing.
Yeah, and Sabe is absolutely flying the Ava Emberton flag. Like, he's going to tell everybody who will. Yes, exactly. He's going to tell everybody that will listen to him that she has the best 2029 point guard resume of anybody in the area. And I don't know that he's wrong, but you need not look past the first 3 minutes of this game to be like, oh my God, like who is this? Just, I mean, walk up three after walk up three. Like this kid is really starting to come into her own, again, logging valuable experience. Let's keep in mind that this kid is just so young in regards to varsity basketball and things like that. Like her next evolution in the game is gonna be, reading and reacting to ball screen. Like a couple of examples, like Ada Hupfer, for example, got caught in a couple hedge. Like she's really good at like understanding hedge and switch and things like that. And they got caught in some like middle ground indecision. There's one particular play that stuck in my head when watching it in the third quarter where Ada Hupfer got pulled out on a hedge and was like, is this a switch? Is it a hedge? And kind of went away a little bit. And Ava Emberton threw the ball out of bounds into the corner. Okay. And I'm not taking a shot at it. I'm just saying like, that's the evolution. Like you now have them in scramble. You have Ada Hupfer guarding the undersized point guard. You now have who was guarding the one now having to defend roll. Like Ava's got to penalize that. And the reason why I say that is because those are the things that Josh will develop Ava to do. Like if you look at their first game versus this game, like my guy's running like split action off of pinch post. He gets a downhill attack for Gabby Harvey early in the game. In some of the split action off pinch post, he gets a three for El McCullough later. Like he's starting to get really comfortable with what he's doing. But yeah, Ava is really making a name for herself. So congratulations to her.
18 points on 6 threes with 5 assists against Noblesville, 19 points yesterday in the 78-58 win over Pendleton Heights for Ava Emberton. And just a punctuating thought on Brownsburg, just the diversity of scoring that they have, where they have so many different players. Joaquin's been having a good season. El McCullough we've talked about before. They have Emberton now stepping up. So they have a lot of nice pieces there over at Brownsburg, and they are really, really done a nice job in year 2 under Sable. Danny, now we opened the show talking about Jennings County. It's time to be joined by the star of that game, Mollie Ernstes. Mollie, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, I am sort of lost my voice yesterday, so sorry for that. But I'm doing good. How are you guys?
I'm doing good. The voice is so much worse than yesterday. I'm so sorry.
I know, it's so bad. I've been like taking throat soothers and stuff, but it's not working. It's terrible.
Oh my goodness. Ma, let's start with your performance. I think we talked a little bit yesterday, just the 3-ball wasn't working. So was it kind of a concerted effort for you to start hammering inside and go to work and get the mid-range going instead?
Yeah, it's definitely something I've been working on in the off season. Just, adding that 3-level score to my game, not just being just a shooter, because that's easy to guard. So you got to be able to get downhill and use that mid-range to your advantage.
Yeah. So some of that stuff was coming off the bounce and some of that stuff was coming off of like post action. And so has this post action kind of always been in Christie's system for you? Like, or is this new because of your development as an offensive scorer?
Well, freshman and sophomore year, we obviously had Julianne, so I was, just the shooter then. But I think ever since I've sort of developed my game to the 3-level score, and I've grew quite a few inches since then. So I think it's kind of just become something that we could use to our advantage, and it's a good way to get some easy points, just, being a few inches taller than some girls. So
yeah. Good for you. Before we give you an opportunity to brag on your teammates, let's just stay with you for a second. Like you're on the floor against Bricker and Zartman, like kids that you know really well, whether it's through, postseason teams or like, AAU or whatever it is. Okay. Is that something that you do you kick it into a little bit of a different gear when you have kids like Zart and Brick on the floor and you know them?
It's always great to play against them. Just, show people what you can do against good competition. And, I love playing with Bricker over the summer. And I talked to Bricker and Zartman before the game, and they're both sweet girls. So, and me and Zartman always battle for best shooter in the state or whatever, and she's a great shooter, and she's going to do great at Miami, Ohio. and it's just fun to play against them. And it's kind of like a little battle, a little trash talk here and there. I didn't mean to stare down Bricker on that block; it just came out. But I was like, but it's always fun to play against them.
There were if you were there, and I'm sure it showed up on stream, but it's different when you're there. There were a couple sequences in that game where you would hit a 3 and then Zartman would hit a 3, or Zartman would make a play and then you would make a play. Was that just natural game flow, or was there in any instances where like, oh God, Zart got me on that one, I'm gonna get her back here?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I'm super competitive, so I don't want, anybody to really outdo myself. I always want to be the best player on the court. It's kind of my mentality. So, but it's also just, what Coach Sigler wants. So, just taking that best shot, and then, if my three's not there, just attacking and looking for the open cutter.
Yeah, Mo, in the lead, we talked about your performances at Sneakers for Santa, that event specifically, and I think I got that right? Like your first Division I offer came as a result of a really good game that you played maybe after sophomore year after South Bend, Washington. In that game, that was the game I think where maybe Kira Reynolds was going to play and then showed up like in a boots or something like that. Okay, what is it about that gym? What is it about that event? What is it about that game that is just like, you know what, it's time?
I don't know. I have been sick all 4 years we've been at Sneakers for Santa. Like freshman year, we played Friend. Sophomore year, we played South Bend, Washington. And then last year, we played Pendleton Heights. And I've just been sick every year. So maybe it's just like Michael Jordan flu game kicking in. I don't know. But man, it's working, I guess.
Well, get sick sectional week. I don't know that I would ever give that advice to anybody, but
oh my gosh,
wild if it works. Before I throw it back to Hank, I do want to take a look. Mollie, I think it's well publicized, and if it's not, it should be, of how extraordinary of a scorer of the basketball that you are. But your volume and your attempts and your efficiency are directly related to what your teammates give you. Use this as an opportunity to brag on, and we talked about Etta Young, we talked about Annis and Kent, those two kids specifically, but we pull the curtain back and take us into practice, take us into some of those early games that we didn't screen. Brag on your teammates, and talk about whatever you want to in regards to them.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you guys talk about Etta and Aniston, but Riley Byford, she's sort of our scrapper, our dog on the defensive end. She gets us a few fast break points a game, which, we don't win the close games without those and those steals that come in clutch. And then just sort of like on the practice side, our seniority, I think we have great upperclassmen leadership. And I think our underclassmen are very good at taking in our leadership and what Coach Sigler says, Coach Lane says. So I think everybody, we don't take stuff to heart as, a lot of people do now. We can take a hit. And so I think that everyone, like I said, we have a lot of JV experience, not a whole lot of varsity experience. So just those girls like Addison Petro, her starting varsity as, not getting a whole lot of varsity minutes in her 3 years. And just for her to step up and really, accomplish her role is something that I'm super proud of for her. And Haley Dunham, I mean, she knocked down a couple threes yesterday. So it's just great. And like, I'm so proud of them just to be able to step up on this varsity level.
Mollie, you mentioned the kids not taking things personally and kind of responding to things. Let's take it back to Friday after that loss to Cathedral. What was the message, not only inside the room, but then as an upperclassman, how do you, the other team captains, kind of reinforce or even help deliver that message to the rest of the team?
I mean, you definitely got to dwell on it then, but we had to bounce back for Warsaw. So the message really just was, we said what we did wrong, and we have a goal for the end of the week to get shots, a certain amount of shots up. So I mean, it's definitely just, we definitely didn't want to dwell on it too much. Stuff we needed to say the stuff that needed to be said, but the message really was that we don't need to dwell on this loss. We need to get ready for Warsaw.
Did it help having an opponent like Warsaw immediately after to just kind of flush the system and regardless of outcome, just get back on the floor and challenge yourselves again?
Yeah, absolutely. We knew that we didn't play like ourselves against Cathedral, and we had nothing to lose against Warsaw, so we just came out and there was no pressure, and we just played like ourselves.
Mollie, we'll get you out of here on this one so you can continue resting up the voice. But signing the national letter of intent in Kansas, obviously you and I have talked about a lot. I'm sure you've talked a lot about with Danny, but just for the audience, what led you to choose Kansas, and just how excited are you to join Lawrence?
It was definitely just a clear choice. I mean, going into my Kansas official visit, I didn't really know. I had like a top 4, but no school really stood out. And I wasn't really super sure, so I was just praying about it and asking God for clarity. And on my visit, he gave me clarity that Kansas was the school for me. And I know I said in my interview with Hank that I didn't want to commit on my visit. I definitely wanted to take a few days after to think about it. So I took a few days and I called all the schools and told them that I've made my decision, and then I committed to I got on a call with Coach Snyder and I committed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Mollie, thanks so much for joining us. Congratulations again on the win. I hope your voice recovers and heals soon, and you get back to feeling like yourself.
Thank you.
No problem.
See you
Take
on the
care.
All-Star team, Mo.
Bye.
Mollie Ernstes with us here on the Scorers Table. Danny, we broke down Silver Creek, Jennings County, Warsaw pretty thoroughly at the beginning of the show, but just one quick thought on the interview.
I'm proud of you because the audience in this geographic part of the country don't know how hard it is to celebrate a kid that's going to Lawrence, Kansas with a degree from the University of Missouri in Columbia. And I think the younger people in the audience will employ the connection of Missouri to the SEC.
Oh, you're right.
But that's not what Hank. That's not what Hank. That's not what
I grew up with.
Yes, he grew up with Big 12. There's some people that are older in the audience that will employ the analogy of the Big 8, not the analogy, the connection to the Big 8. Missouri, Kansas is one of the oldest rivalries, and so Hank, I'm proud of you for smiling. As fake as it was, I could totally tell.
I'm extremely happy for Mollie. I'm extremely happy for Brooklyn Wren, who's also going to Kansas, and Logan Bell, who's also going to Kansas. That being said. No, I'm kidding. It is wonderful. I'm super excited for them. And Mizzou KU is unlike anything in the world of sport. It is really, really cool. Danny, let's talk about the other big game of the day from Sneakers for Santa. That, of course, Homestead, Plainfield. You and I, again, just nailed our predictions. Another close game. Really good job by us. Instead, Homestead scored the first 19 to nothing en route to a 57-35 win over Plainfield. Again, this is kind of a theme, and it's going to be a theme when we talk about Warsaw here in a minute. But how does a team respond to a loss? And inside that Homestead locker room after they lost to Norwell, Rod Parker said he walked in there and didn't really have to say much because the players already knew. They were already focused, kind of knew what they did wrong, knew the mistakes, knew what they needed to clean up, and were ready to move on. That's a sign of maturity, and that's where I'll start the conversation as I throw it over to you.
So Homestead first. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Homestead first. Just the way that I rambled there. Homestead, the way that they responded to the loss and that.
Look, this is again. It's going to be probably too far. Probably an overreaction on the night after, but Homestead's ability to guard almost makes them unbeatable. Like it just almost like they're beatable, and they've already lost. They lost at Norwell, but aren't we starting to get clarity? Like we've talked about Homestead a lot. We've talked to Coach Parker. We've talked to many of his players on here. If you go back and clip all of those and just watch all of them in succession, the underlying theme is defense. You're starting to understand it, and you're starting to get it now. Like if Homestead guards, they're darn near unbeatable. And now there's evidence to support that. Like that's why Coach Parker is so hard on Maya Epps. And that's why Coach Parker is so hard on Gabby Helsum about their performance on the floor. They at one point in time, Plainfield, it says 57-35 on our graphic right now. But I think I looked up in the fourth quarter, like Plainfield had 22 points in the fourth quarter at some point in time. This is a team with, Dugan and Williams and Menser and 22 points. Mm-hmm. And their ability to guard there's such attention to it. Now, let me get a little bit more granular with that. If you look at their last two games, them guarding I actually said I didn't think they lost the Norwell game because they couldn't guard dribble drive. Like they lost it because they turned it over and got the ball deflected.
Yep.
But now this is 2 consecutive basketball games against a dribble drive, which is a 4-out, 1-in set, and off the bounce in this one, and where Plainfield kind of settled more for 5-out downhill attack. You have kids that are guarding in a box with very minimal help, and they have to keep their kid out of the paint. But if you look at like player angles, like they weren't allowing change of direction back into the paint. They were okay with a kid maybe getting middle, but when they got middle, they would wall up. Like these are things that are not accidental. Like these are things that they're working on in practice. And I think that you're starting to see the fruits of their labor come out in games like Norwell and Plainfield. But the story of the game last night was Homestead's defense. And Coach Parker will probably disagree with that. But it's true, Rod, man. I mean, your kids are guarding.
They guard really aggressively, really physically too. Like the physicality of that game, it was really noticeable, especially as things went on. I agree. I'm glad that you took the defense angle because I was going to talk about the offense because it is mesmerizing the way that they share that ball and the way that they're able to move it around and make that extra pass and just find the open look. Like it's very unselfish. And you can tell that this is a team that has been together for a very long time. Like, you know, like you can, with age, you can just tell the trust and comfortability and the understanding that you make a sacrifice, you give the ball away, knowing that it's going to come back to you and you're going to get a better shot than you would have otherwise. And just that understanding. And then two, yesterday really showed the diversity of weapons where it's Mullering or Epps or Helsum or Ankenbrook, any of them. And then soon Delaney Knoll's going to come back from her injury. I think she's expected to come back next game. I mean, just all these different pieces are stepping up in big moments and just big shots and just they come at you in waves. And again, just the way that they share the ball, it's fun to watch because it runs so smoothly. And to do that against Plainfield is pretty impressive. I know that 57's honestly, I was surprised that the point total was so low. I had to take a phone call late in that game, but the point total is lower than I expected for as well as it felt like that offense was running and the way they were finding their shots and hitting. I mean, just everybody, everything, everywhere.
So many people know this about me. I like to sit within earshot of the coaches. That's one of the things that I like to, I mean, look, sometimes I'm at those basketball games for a lot of different reasons, but many times it's just for my own development, right? I admire a lot of these coaches and how they go about their business. On the offensive side, it's interesting that you talked about how the ball moves. The most popular thing that I heard Coach Parker say with the highest level of frequency in that game was move it. The people that were in our section were actually joking that was the name of their offense. Like Coach Parker is trying to facilitate ball movement and trying to create different matchups and being harder to guard. But he knows that if the ball moves, that he is going to get per possession good shots, but he's also going to get better shots and many times end up with the best shot, which might be a inside out Gabby Helsum 3. It might be a mismatch switch post for Maya Epps. It might be a downhill drive for Carly Mullering, but that is all facilitated on ball movement. So now again, we have returns in real time for what Coach Parker is talking about. He's saying, move it, move it, move it. We didn't talk about this game prior. This is the first time you and I are talking about it. And the minute that you get to the offensive side of the ball, what do you celebrate? The ball movement. Like this is the Coach Rod Parker segment of the show, because you can tell this is what he's trying to do. And that was a game where the best team, maybe one of the best teams, one of the best teams in the state, maybe the best team in the state, they put it all together against a really good Plainfield team and just dusted him.
Plainfield, I think, as we transition to the Plainfield side of things, also should shout out Susie Prego, who Rod mentioned is just kind of finding her way, getting settled in. She's only a sophomore, 6'1". The kid stands out, number 44. I kept peeking up and seeing her make plays after play after play, and like I talked about her after the game, and he said she's coming along. You could tell that she's starting to understand it. She has sky high expectations because when you see that frame, obviously it's like, oh, basketball player, she's going to be really good, or should be really good right now. But you could tell that she's gradually getting her way there, and it's part of the process. So she's going to be one of those, not unlike Lily Barnes, not unlike Mollie Ernstes, who we get to see kind of in spurts, at least I do in person. It's going to be fun to watch and see how that kid progresses and steps forward. Same thing too. Maya Epps, quickly just shouting out her. She was excellent yesterday. Maya was hitting some huge shots, made some really good plays, really sharp passes. I was really impressed with Maya yesterday. On the Plainfield side, as I get to the point that I mentioned earlier, they got within 9 within the first half, I think.
They did a couple times, yeah.
So they were close. There were some signs of progress. They found a little bit of traction, but then it's just like every time they got a little bit of oxygen, felt like maybe going into halftime that maybe they'd have a chance to continue the run and take a run at Homestead. I mean, it got stomped out immediately, and shots weren't falling. They were struggling to move the ball and find space against Homestead. And yeah, I'm curious to hear what you saw and what you were thinking or what you thought of Plainfield's performance now that they've lost. That was their second loss in 3 games.
Well, I mean, I've completely invalidated any opinion that I have on Plainfield is completely invalidated because I sat here in the same box and told everybody that they were going to play man, and they come out in a 2-2-1 press, dropped back to 2-3 zone. And I was like, of course I'm wrong. And of course I'm wrong early. And no, that's not why Homestead got up 19-0. Like Homestead was just ready to go there. But I think if I were to talk about Plainfield, I think I would like the gaps were just a little bit tight. I had mentioned that they were running 5 out. When you run 5 out, and this is not a Plainfield thing, this is just a basic basketball statement. Okay, you've got to beat your defender off the bounce. They weren't beating anybody off the bounce. They weren't putting Homestead in defensive rotation at all, and then they would end up settling. And so I think Plainfield's biggest takeaway is this: if you're going to have a team that's going to straight up guard you, they need to find a way to space appropriately in 5 out, or have maybe even some secondary looks. They tried some things. There was a stretch in the second quarter where they were running kind of Keelan blocks, kind of flat action, that central third high ball screen. They were setting that. They ran a lot of 5 out stuff. They tried to turn Homestead over, make it a transition basketball game with the press. Like they tried different things, but just centering and focusing in on that 5 out, I thought that made it really, really hard on Menser. Like Menser had to, we talked about with what Kenzie Cook has to do and kids like that and high volume to get point production. Man, Menser had to work last night for hers.
Mm-hmm. It was surprising when she got the open looks that she did. And like when I saw her shooting threes, and it felt like the shots that really stood out were the ones where she's forced way back behind the arc, the top of the arc, shooting threes, because Homestead did such a good job against her.
Well, they did. And I said this to somebody after the game too, like I was sitting with her. I mentioned that I was sitting with some of the Ball State coaches last night too. And we were talking about it. Like Hannah got clean looks and baseline out of bounds. She got 2 made threes. Okay. It doesn't sound like a big deal to anybody. Great execution, Plainfield, blah, blah, blah. But to get threes and baseline out of bounds sets, those are generally designed with some sort of screening action. Their 5 out, there isn't a ton of screening action within the context and the execution of that offense. I do think that when Plainfield looks at the film, I think they're going to find ways to maybe chip or screen or move Menser around a little bit more, because if she's going to get screens and baseline out of bounds and it's going to lead to made threes, I think they probably want to try to find ways to get Hannah those looks in just regular game flow offense kinds of things. So look, that's the beauty of basketball, right? That doesn't invalidate Plainfield as a potential state contender. But what it does is it does amplify some of the things that they're going to have to work on, because they are really good, but they were really off balance last night, because you're just looking at it and you're like, wait a second. Berkeley, I mean, I'm not picking on Berkeley, any kid on Plainfield, okay? In other games that they play, they're going to beat their defender. Help is going to come. They're going to throw one pass. They're going to make a 3. Period. Mm-hmm. But if you're never beating your defender off the bounce, that's the first domino that never falls. And the second one and the third one also then remain standing. And now that leads to longer possessions, digging your heels in on the defensive side. So as much as I credit the Homestead defense for the way that they guarded Plainfield in space, I do think that some of these things for Plainfield is correctable through scheme.
Plainfield, for better or worse, has their next big test probably comes December 9th against Center Grove. I think it's fair to say in between them they play Greenwood, Evansville Memorial, Avon, and Whiteland. Then it's right back to the grind with Center Grove and Norwell stacked. And that Norwell game is obviously part of the Hall of Fame Classic, where it'll likely be Norwell and then Warsaw if they're able to get past the Knights in the opening round. Otherwise, it'll be Evansville Central. So it'll be.
But no, listen, Center Grove. What a perfect opportunity if they do in fact see what I saw when we played. I'm not saying that this is what they have to do or should do or whatever. I'm just that's what my eye told me. Okay, Center Grove plays on the pack line and they switch everything. That's essentially what Homestead was doing. They were kind of playing on the pack line, kind of switching when appropriate. I mean, they weren't afraid of getting into different matchups and they kept them out of middle third. That's exactly what Stuck is going to do against them. And so now I'm going to screen that game because I am going to watch to see if they run the 5 out against it. And if they're able to kind of beat some of those defenders off the bounce or if they move to something else.
Absolutely. Danny, let's talk about the event at Pike yesterday. Just one game that I wanted to spotlight from over there, in particular, one that we were both at. East Central takes down Hammond Central 68-42. My opening thought, Natalie Stanger, the sophomore, got to see her for the first time. She's fun to watch. But how about their 2 6-footers, Lily Maple and Sydney Campbell? They both made some good plays for there. After a competitive first half, then East Central kind of managed to settle in, stop turning the ball over as much, and tighten things up a little bit on defense. We're able to start tugging away from there. But some big plays for them. Kaylee Meadows with the 3-point play in the third that got East Central its largest lead, and they kind of took off from there. Those are my big thoughts from the game. What'd you make of East Central, Hammond Central?
He got it with Lily Maple. Like, wait, that kid, like, I just said casually, like at the end of a sentence when talking about East Central, like, oh, they got a 29. That's pretty good. Like, but she's good. Like, yeah. She is good. She's got some skill. She ended up taking MVP honors, whatever that's worth, right? But, she ends up taking MVP honors in the game, but she made threes. She got in transition and caught the basketball and made layups. She had a nice little one-on-one attack that ended up in a reverse on the right side with the right hand. Like that, or left side with the right hand. There were things in that game which, if you looked at it and said, "Hey, I like that Maple kid," and then you went to the program and saw that she was a freshman, yes, you'd be like, "Wait a minute,
that was actually me."
There might be something to this. So good for Kevin to have the experience to play against a team like Hammond Central, which again has India Hutchinson. Like India Hutchinson has some of those shots that she was hitting, like the fadeaway lefty 15-footers. I mean, not a long list of the kids that can hit that shot. Okay. But I do think that Stinger and Sydney and Lily and some of their other pieces, if they can tighten some things up in regards to, and there's certain things that are going to jump out, like finishing at the rim. I can guarantee you Kevin is he's not happy with their ability to make layups. I'm sure, but there's a lot to like about that basketball team. Really, really good win, but you're right. Lily Maple is the lead there.
Absolutely. Did you have any other thoughts in that game, Danny, before we move on?
Those are my. Again, I sit within earshot of the coaches, and again, Kevin is somebody who I don't get to see coach live a lot of times, and when he was the most animated was when they were missing shots at the rim. I suspect that this is a not a systemic issue, but an issue that has plagued them early in the season. Here's my point: East Central, I'll do Kevin's job for it. Make layups, like make layups. Like I'm. It sounds so simple and so stupid, but generally the teams that make layups, particularly in girls basketball, are teams that are really, really effective. And I think that Kevin has a sense that he's like, hey, I've got some athleticism in the backcourt. I've got some size. I've got 2 6-footers. I've got some continuity, even with Lily being a freshman. Like Sydney's a junior. Like she's been around for a minute. Stenger being just a sophomore, but there's some continuity from the team that won sectionals last year. But I told you that Kevin Charts misses at the rim, and I can guarantee you that that's the first statistic that he looked at, because you could tell, like I could hear him say, like, "Oh my God," like he was very demonstrative and very frustrated that they were missing shots at the rim.
It's a team that feels like they're at the opening of their window. Like this is the beginning of East Central and their rise back to where they were just a few years ago as they cycle back in. Danny, any other games you want to touch on? I think we hit everything on our list going into the show. Anything else that you wanted to mention or shout out? I feel like we've hit basically everything.
That's all.
Yeah. DC hung with Floyd for a bit. Tip of the cap to just for real, like to Keith Hollins for putting on that event. It was very well run for first year event. Keith coached the game. I was wondering why he had the noon game, why he didn't give himself a primetime slot. It was so that he could run the event. I'm a moron. And he did a phenomenal job running the event. Kim Mulkey was there obviously to see Lola Lampley, but I'm crediting it to Keith Hollins and his connections in the industry. So good job, Keith, getting Kim Mulkey in the gym. Keith, I'm going to clip that off and send it to you, buddy. But no, again, just a really well-run event. It was really cool. And it was nice, too, to get such an array of teams involved there. I was there. I caught the tail end of Pike Addicts. And then, obviously, East Central, Hammond Central. You also had Floyd Central, Decatur Central. I had a chance to catch up with Nick Carruthers a little bit before the game. They have some young piece over there. I think they're a senior-free team this year. We're going to have to get Nick on the show here at some point because they're a team that's trending up. And, yeah, Snyder over Lawrence Central, which segues in nicely to the news. That's Riley Shellhammer's decision. She's no longer with the Lawrence Central girls basketball program. Janon Lampley confirmed that with me last night. I'm working on hopefully having a story up on that later today on IndyStar. Danny, I'm more curious, I think, on the basketball side of things for Lawrence Central and just kind of where they go from here. Because, I mean, that's a significant loss, obviously. They have a lot of talent on that roster. I think yesterday the Ben Davis transfer became eligible and was able to play her first game yesterday, I believe. So that's good news. So you take the good with the bad, I guess. But with Lawrence Central, I guess, just how do you see them progressing, moving on from here?
Yeah. So so it's going to beg a couple questions, right? Shellhammer it's a huge loss because of the just in a vacuum, just the sheer talents of the kid. Okay, so just independent of everything else, but basketball isn't played in a vacuum, right? It's played on the floor. And so let's watch kind of the on-floor chemistry and the on-floor spacing. Look, Lawrence Central they have no choice but to make this addition by subtraction. They have no choice but to do that. And so it will be interesting to see if we can see maybe differences from a chemistry perspective on the floor, from a spacing perspective, and the things that they can do. But the biggest issue is going to be the biggest thing to watch with Lawrence Central is going to be point guard. Like Riley was not handling the ball primarily as PG1 at Lawrence Central. So let's establish that, okay? But that's what she's going to play in college. Like she's going to be a point guard in college, and she's going to be at whatever high school she ends up at. She's going to be a point guard. So to take a kid like that off of the roster, Kiki Butler can play one. Of course she can, but it's not her primary position. Lola Lampley can play one. It's one of the most talented high school basketball players we've ever seen in the area, but that's not her natural position as one. That's not she's going to play for Coach Mulkey, who you mentioned earlier. Aubrey Ingram, who you had mentioned, primarily not a one. Lanai Hyatt, primarily not a one. Hollowell, primarily not a one. So let's see what happens from a primary ball handling perspective with Lawrence Central, because I have to parlay this into a potential Pike Lawrence Central matchup, let's say, right?
We could see that here in a couple of weeks.
Pike has 11 point guards.
Yeah.
No, I don't like what are we going to see, right? That is the most fascinating thing spinning forward, is to see who Lawrence Central and Coach Lampley entrust with running the offense, because Layla Abdurraqib was that person throughout their state championship run 2 years ago. and the duration of their season last year as well, even through the injuries and all of that. So I think that's the biggest thing.
I'm curious to see, I know I say this a lot, how a team develops, but Lawrence Central in particular, because that's a largely new team, because they graduated Jayla, they graduated Layla, added a bunch of transfers, and they're reforming old habits to get them settled into Janon's system and what she wants to do. So that's step one. You mentioned the on-floor chemistry aspect. That's step two. And obviously, Riley only played 3 games, but 3 weeks worth of practice in season, plus the preseason, plus the off-season time that they had together over the summer. So chemistry was already building there. Now you kind of have to start over from square one in that respect. You mentioned the positioning is going to be really interesting to see. I think they're going to be growing pains. I'm not entirely sure if that will translate to growing pains in terms of wins. Like, I don't know if we're going to see that in wins and losses. I don't know if it'll translate to the wins losses column. They're going out to Dixie, Kentucky here next week. Then County starts up. But yeah, I think the team that we see of Lawrence Central, regardless of wins and losses here in the month of December, is going to be vastly different for the team that we see when they take on Lawrence North for the potentially the second time, maybe the two of probably at the very least the last little prequel before they meet again in sectional. I'm very curious to see how different this team looks between then and now because of the chemistry, because of all those things that I just mentioned. But yeah, when you subtract a piece like that, it sucks. But at the very least, I suppose the timing works out well where you still have the majority of your season to go. So you have some games to figure this out, get them in game action, and see where things go from there. And Janon is a great coach. They have a phenomenally talented roster. So we'll see where things go there at LC. Daniel, I think that it would be a fun exercise based off of what we saw yesterday to discuss who we think is maybe the top 2 to 3 teams in Class 4A. Because I think there's an argument to be made that maybe it's still Homestead. That's who I had in my preseason number 1. I certainly think that Lawrence Central, despite the personnel changes, has an argument. I don't know if you could do it for HSE, Plainfield. So really, Danny, I'm just basically debating between those 2 schools, but I'm curious to see how you would rack, let's say, the top 3 in the state.
This exercise sucks, by the way.
I'm going to do it to myself in writing here in a few days, so don't you worry. This is my
somebody texted me yesterday who had a kid who played high school basketball a couple of years ago, and they were trying to catch up because they were going to watch some of the showcases. And they asked me to kind of handicap the field and just kind of fill them in. I think in the way the text that I wrote back was, and this is before yesterday's action, the text that I wrote back to this person was, most people would lay the field if they got Homestead and Warsaw in the north and Lawrence Central and Pike in the south. That was the exact text that I wrote. Then all of yesterday's games happened. Okay. Warsaw lost. Homestead, blows the doors off of one of the 10 best teams in the state. You have the Shellhammer news that broke, like nice little Adam Schefter bomb, by the way, like at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. It's like, what in the world is happening right now? Okay. So, I don't disagree. Like, I don't think that it changed. I did not disagree. I don't think that it changed. I think right now, if you made me pick, the 4 teams that would be in the semi-state championship, I think those would be the 4. The team that I think in my mind took the biggest jump yesterday was not Homestead, although I love the Homestead outfit this year, particularly when they get Noel back. But I want to see him with Noel back before I say anything, because Noel isn't just a guy, or just a player. Like, it's not just somebody that just you're hopping back on the like. This is regardless of class, this is one of the 25 best players in the state. And she makes her teammates better. Maya Epps is considerably a better basketball player with Delaney on the floor and then with her off the floor. Okay. But the team that made the biggest jump to me is Pike. And I'm going to tell you why.
Ooh.
Seeing Pike up close and seeing the athleticism that Nicholson provides, seeing the explosion that the length of Booker, seeing the strength of Jeffers, seeing all of these people, look how naturally we just dropped Pike off the top line because they went to Homestead, who you just had as your preseason number one. They get beat, and all of a sudden they're a step below Lawrence. Like watching them play Addicts yesterday, who has good players. Okay, I mean they've got good players. Watching them just do Keith Holland's stuff, I think really just kind of ascends them in my mind. So for me, I think it's and this is all due respect to Norwell, okay, but it is Homestead and Warsaw in the north for me, and some of the other names that will clip this and hate me for it.
Bloomington South.
Bloomington. Well, no, that just the north.
Oh, just the north.
Okay. HSE. Okay, HSE is absolutely on that kind of, to me, next level down. McCutcheon, maybe next level down. A team like Northrop, maybe next level down. Maybe Valparaiso, maybe next level down. In the south, yeah, to me, Pike and Lawrence Central. Next level down there is a Bloomington South, is a Plainfield. We'll see how the Brownsburg thing kind of materializes. And then there's all the South Indianapolis teams, right? Like Center Grove, who we didn't mention or break down the game, but they won the Johnson County tournament last night over Franklin. So Center Grove may be starting to find its stride a little bit. The comfort level in losing Quatari and injecting other players into that rotation is going to make Franklin Central very interesting moving forward. But yeah, those are the four for me. Yeah. What say you, Hank, or do we have to wait until?
Oh, you don't have to wait because I'm going to sketch this out, see what the reaction is, see what your face does when I say these things, and then if it's bad, I'll change. No, I'm kidding. So I think roughly, I think the top two probably hold Homestead and Lawrence Central because, like you said, Homestead played a really good game against Norwell. It just the defense that Norwell brings and that pressure is it's incredible what they're able to do to teams, and a team like Homestead too. And it's not just Noel that they're missing. I mean, Gabby Helsum is pretty banged up. She's playing through that injury that we talked to her about last Sunday. That poor kid is tough as hell. I mean, really, truly, tip of the cap to her for playing through that. Lawrence Central, I mean, they've given you no reason really to bump it down. They grinded out that win over Hamilton Southeastern. They decisively beat what was a shorthanded Snyder team, but still, that was a tumultuous day for them as a program. So to respond like that was really impressive. And then it gets interesting. I think maybe off the top of my head, maybe a Pike or HSE slides into that third spot, but you could also make an argument for a Bloomington South, though I'm waiting to see them play somebody. I know that it didn't matter last year, but I value strength of schedule. Norwell, certainly they lost to Warsaw. Norwell did, but they beat Homestead with that defense, and we know the piece that they have coming back. We saw it last year, so that's kind of there. And then I think fifth, you probably slot in Warsaw, I think, because we know what they have back. We know how they defend. What I'm really interested in with Warsaw, and this kind of segues to wrapping up the discussion that we started the show with, 38-1 in regular season games since January 2024 going into yesterday and that loss. And Lenny Krebs talked about the process of building chemistry. The team last year, we all saw how special they were, the way that they shared the ball, a lot reminiscent of Homestead, what they did. That took 2 seasons. That was 2 seasons worth of chemistry building, etc. It's up to this team to recreate that, except the urgency is dialed up to 1,000,000, and you have a much tighter window to do it. So how do they figure that out? How do they cultivate that trust that we saw with Homestead that made their offense so special? How is Warsaw able to do that and recultivate that? I'm really curious to see how they respond to that loss. Fortunately or unfortunately, the schedule, their conference isn't as challenging, so it's going to be a little bit of a gap before their next big test. They'll be they'll be down here. They got some big games coming up, but I think that's how I would go. That's all subject to change. I really like Bloomington South, what they have coming back. I love Pike, obviously, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things go there for Warsaw, who plays Penn on November 25th to wrap up the month.
Yeah, Warsaw. Okay, so the metric-based analysis that I always employ with Warsaw, like Jennings County scored 64 points last night en route to the win. 65 was the number for Warsaw. So that begs the very mathematical statement. Warsaw didn't get to 65. If they got to 65, they win, right? So that speaks to their offensive inefficiencies in that game. And we talked about East Central missing shots at the rim. Warsaw missed a ton of shots at the rim. Just a ton of shots at the rim. They finally break out and get Zartman a multiple 3 game. And not a multiple 3 game. She's hit multiple threes, I think, in every game. But this one was different. And I think anybody that's a Warsaw Tigers fan would tell you that this one was different with Zartman's involvement in the game. But their inability to get to 65 against Jennings County, I think, speaks to maybe some offensive things that they need to talk about. Or is this, you can't let Jennings County get 64 points and on some of the defensive sides of things. So I do think that Lenny Krebs, I hate the bad loss thing, or the good loss thing. I don't believe in that. But in this case, it's probably really true that they now have an opportunity to truly evaluate their, metric and mathematical based model of 65. Did they lose that game because they weren't able to guard Mollie Ernstes and allow too easy of baskets for Aniston Kenton in catch and release 3 and Etta Young at the rim? Or was it their inability to make shots at the rim and space things out on the offensive side? It will be interesting to watch the next 5 or 6 games leading up to the Hall of Fame with Warsaw to see if things look a little bit different moving forward. I'm not saying that they should, but let's see what Lenny and staff kind of come up with there. But that's my closing thought on Warsaw, because they didn't look. It's a loss. They still have 4 of the best wins anywhere in the state.
Yep, agreed. And to your point about good losses, by the way, Warsaw plays Penn November 25th. That's one of those games similar to Jennings County. If you get caught napping, Christie's going to pick you off, or they're going to pick you off there at Penn. They're going to Christy Ulrich is going to get you. Like they're talented enough to do that. But the good loss thing, last year's season turned with a loss to Homestead late in the regular season. The only other regular season they lost that they've had since the calendar turned to 24. Can they cultivate that? It's a lot different process this year, like I said, where they're trying to rebuild that chemistry, trying to recultivate things and figure out how everything fits, trusting each other, making the extra pass, understanding that if you commit to the team, the individual come with it. That's all part of the process. It's all part of the learning and growing of a team. How will Warsaw take to that? How will they respond to a loss, which is a very new and unique thing for them in the regular season? Will be fascinating to see as we move forward.
Well, what also is new and unique with Warsaw is the fact that they even have 6 or 7 really, really good games on the schedule. Remember, the narrative on them 2 years ago was that's a really good basketball team that doesn't play anybody. And then last year they played more. This year their schedule is a gauntlet, man. It is a gauntlet. So there is some battle testing. I think if you, I think Lenny told me before the game, he didn't expect to win every basketball game this year. I don't think he expected to lose to Jennings County, but this is all by design. Like this is all by design to battle test his kids with tougher schedules. The other thing that this does too is it puts them in kind of like I call it like NFL scout, like you finish one game and then you put in a game plan for another team and then you implement it in practice, you execute it in practice, and then you try to bring it to life on game day. That's postseason basketball. So you mentioned Penn. Like, what a great test. Like, they have a kid by the name of Alexis Werner. Like, they have one of the best post players in the state, in Addison Hummel, who's not even playing. But they have a freshman like Jillian Sanderson, 2029, has some connections to the Notre Dame basketball program. And we'll talk about Penn kind of later in I don't want to get too far down the road on this team. I have not seen them. No. But my point back to Warsaw is they now have to flush everything about that they know about how Norwell played them, for example, and implement a game plan specific to Penn and execute it. And so we're going to start to see Warsaw be more battle tested come January, February than maybe we have in years past.
It's good. It's great too. Like it's the same thing with Eastern Hancock. Like the loss isn't going to define their season. It doesn't really shift my thoughts on them necessarily. Like I still think they're all really good teams. It's good to see them get that experience, and now we get to see how they respond, and then you start to pass judgment. How does this team respond? How do they grow from that? Danny, we covered a lot of ground today. Covered a lot of ground this weekend. It was good to see you yesterday, buddy.
Yeah, it was.
But that's the show. We thank you all so much for watching. We thank Mollie Ernstes for stopping by with us. I'm not sure what the Thanksgiving week plans are. We might just take a week off. We'll see. But we'll definitely be back at some point. We thank you all so much for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.